What is up, guys? Hfmasters here, and today we are reviewing the LEGO Ninjago Legacy Golden Mech. The item number is 71702. It comes with 489 pieces and it will retail for $40. Set also comes with 4 minifigures, and on the front of the box you can just see the set. On the back of the box you can see all the functions. So here is the Golden Mech fully complete, and I gotta say right off the bat, this is a really nice looking set. Just the overall look of it, they did such a good job as far as that goes. It is definitely better than the original one in my opinion, but the first thing we do really have to talk about here is of course going to be the articulation, because this mech does go a little bit above and beyond as far as LEGO mechs go, and we're of course talking about the knees. Look at that. You get that nice 90-degree bend. This is something that we've been waiting for LEGO mechs for so long, and they've finally done it. It's really nice to finally see them get that in there. So as far as how these work in terms of articulation, it is still kind of limited. It's definitely not quite as great as it could be, because the way the knees are designed, they can only move backwards about to here. They have a single basically 90-degree bend. They don't move forward though, because this little key slope here, which it makes sense as far as stability goes, but the problem is because these ankles, they are very limited as far as articulation goes. They can move forward and back just a small amount, and that is for stability purposes, and they move side to side a whole lot. You can see you get a great amount of ankle articulation going side to side, but forward and back is very limited. And so what that results in is if you move this leg back, you can't really do a hold-on pose outside of like this, and this is still really good as far as LEGO mechs go. But if you want to do something like you move this knee back and then you want to put the foot or something, you can't stabilize the foot in the greatest way. See, I can get it like this, so you can kind of do like a running pose, but you can't get this foot flat on the ground because it can't move forward enough. So you can do it like this, but this isn't the most stable pose. So the way you'd have to do that is you have to kind of move this leg over here and get this moving out like that, do something like that, and then you can kind of get that whole illusion. So the articulation is really good here. It's just not necessarily the best. It could have been done better. That's the point here. It's good, but it's not quite as good as it probably could have been, but it's still really solid. Now, as far as the actual detailing on the leg goes, that's very nice. These feet, not the greatest articulation, but I think they look really good. The legs, again, they look really good, and then the top especially, they put a lot of nice details in here. It's just really nice and pretty faithful to the original one. They're just well done as far as the detailing goes. So like the legs, the arms also look really good as far as detailing go, especially the forearms. I really like the way they have this sticker piece right in here just blending with the grill. It flows really nice. It's a really well done thing right there. The upper arms, I like the assembly they put here. It kind of gives a nice samurai-esque thing. And there also is this little piece that they have rotated to the side, which does have a sticker on the top. That looks nice as well. Only thing I don't like from these arms, and this is very nitpicky, but these front sections of the upper arms are in this light gray color. I don't think that works very well, just because the rest of the mech is really consistent with the white and gold color scheme. So these two little light gray sections, they just seem a little bit off, but that is pretty nitpicky and not really that big of a deal. But here's the big problem here with the arms. So as far as articulation goes, these arms, pretty good articulation, just moving up and down. You can move these elbows up and down. There's nothing to complain about there. That's great. But the thing is the way they have this constructed, they have it on these ratcheted joints, so you can't really move it to the side, other than this, which this is good, but you really kind of want to be able to slash the sword across the chest. You want to be able to like wind it up and kind of get to the side, or get it in a pose where the sword is leaning across without having to do something like that. It's kind of awkward because there really isn't any mobility to get to the side as far as the elbow goes, or even as far as this ratcheted joint goes. You can move it to the side like this, but you don't have the ability to move the elbow where it would be, the sword would be parallel to the ground. You can't do that. So the articulation, it still works, But again, this is another case where I feel like it could have been better. It's not as good as it necessarily could be. And this is another thing which is kind of unfortunate because they could have gotten away with this. There are a lot of mechs that do this kind of articulation, but if you're going to do this style, then you should include waist articulation, so you can just move the waist and slash the mech to the side like this, because in this case, this is what you got, and it doesn't feel like you get enough range with the sword, especially if you want to stick the arm out. You can't stick the arm out and slash across to the chest, you know, with the sword actually facing towards like the enemy. You can only do something like this, which it just isn't as good as it could be. But one good thing to note here is that you can remove the sword fairly easily. It's just connected by this small axle, and these hands are fully articulated, so these fingers, they move wherever you want them to go. There's a nice thumb over here which moves side to side, and also up and down, which that's just something that they didn't really have to do, but they included, and it works out pretty nice. It gives you a nice grip on the sword, does everything you need it to do. The torso section of this mech looks really nice. It doesn't do anything special, there's no waist articulation or anything like that, but I do think it looks pretty good. I do like all the detailing they got in here. They have these two pieces, and that's a whole Technic mechanism that they did. That looks pretty good. There's this little red belt, which kind of looks out of place, but I don't mind it at all, and overall it's just pretty solid. There is one little thing to note here. This part does kind of open, which obviously it's not the best look, but you can kind of use it to kind of give the illusion that you're opening the mech up and getting a sort of a cockpit for Lloyd to jump into. And speaking of the cockpit, I do have Lloyd in here right now. I will move just the samurai hat thing. It's a pretty simple cockpit. There's just one small console piece up in front that you can see, and that's pretty much as far as that goes. Also, one other thing to note here is that this samurai hat sort of thing, which, as I showed, it does move down, but this whole section is printed, and it is a really, really nice print. I do think they did a really good job with that. That's just something I thought was worth noting, just because I think they did a really nice job. One last thing to note here is the back of this mech. It's pretty well covered up. There's some nice details. There are these two little sword contraptions that are movable. You can move them pretty much all over the place. Those just create a nice little effect in the front. And there is also this flag, which is adjustable. You can move it up and down. And there is one sticker on there, which they do have on both sides. Overall, just pretty solid thing. So the set does come with 4 minifigures, being Sensei Wu, Gold Lloyd, General Kozu, and the Stone Army Scout. Now, 3 of these minifigures we have already gotten before, so I'll let you go over them briefly. Sensei Wu, same one from before. He's a pretty nice print, nothing to complain about. I really like that figure. Lloyd, he is technically slightly different here since he does have a little bit of an accessory piece to hold his sword, but otherwise he's just pretty solid, and he does have an alternate face. Stone Army Scout, same old, same old. He's the same thing as pretty much all the other Stone Army guys. But the really interesting one here is Kozu. Now Kozu is, of course, an exclusive figure. He has the whole 4-arm thing going. The 2 torsos on the bottom are not exclusive prints. They're the exact same prints used on the Stone Army Scout. But he does have that exclusive upper torso as well as a new face mold. And then, of course, he does have that whole helmet thing. But overall, this is a pretty solid figure. It's not obviously, you know, the greatest thing ever. I mean, it's not like the best figure in the history of figures, but it is really nice to have. I also do really appreciate that they included the elemental blade. This one specifically, this is the elemental blade of ice. That's just something that I think is really nice to have that they didn't really have to do, but it makes it just that much better to have that included. This is a pretty solid figure and an overall pretty solid minifigure selection. So overall, this is a pretty good set. For a mech that doesn't have any sort of stud shooters or play features other than just moving it around and having all the articulation in the arms really is disappointing for that type of thing, but the articulation in the legs still is great, even though it definitely isn't necessarily as amazing as it could have been. It still does have massively better opposability than your typical Lego mech would, especially in the legs, but the arms are just not quite where they need to be for something that doesn't have any other play features. As far as the actual value of the set goes, I think this is definitely worth $40. I actually think, at least in terms of the size of the set, they could have gotten away with it at $50, although obviously I'm glad this is at $40, but in terms of just the actual like volume here, I feel like it could have been actually more expensive and people would have been okay with that. The actual build, really nice. Just, there isn't really a whole lot to complain about other than the arms. It's a really solid set. The value of it, I think it's great. Minifigure selection is good. And just an overall, a really pretty good set. But that is it Thank you guys for watching. Till next time, see you guys later.